So today I'm going to show you what I do to make an inner hive cover, and I'm going to show you the completed and slightly modified screened bottom board. So what you may notice that I've changed is I added this piece of cedar. It just happened to already have a 45 in it. It's a piece of scrap wood. You don't really need a 45, but I did that just to shed water for whatever reason. But this is a backboard, a backing board, and then I put a piece of fill right in front of it. And the fill piece on here is the same thickness out here as the bottom hive body. So when I set, for two things this will do, when I set that bottom hive body here, I've got a positive stop on the back of the hive, especially once they start getting heavy and they start getting kind of sticky. You put it right, this is about 5/8 of an inch thick. It butts right up against this backstop here. This will eliminate any void space between the hive body and the bottom of the screen board, so no bees will be tempted to make some combs in there. And then that leaves me about 5/8 of an inch from the entryway to the face of the hive body. I'll show you how that spaces out. It'll butt right up against there, and all you have to do is line it up side to side. It's pretty cool. And coming around to the inside, here's that piece of fill I was telling you about. It makes the inside of the hive body flush with the screen bottom board, so there's no void space under there. This leading edge, or the entryway to the hive here, I've made basically a flow restrictor. This is 2 inches wide. This is 5/8 of an inch tall. And while the hive is still young and doesn't have a lot of bee army to protect itself, and during really inclement weather in the rainy and cold months, you can restrict the entry and exit of the bees. Slide that down in there, and that restricts the airflow, the cold wet airflow that may go in there. This restricts the access of any predators trying to get in there, and it's easier for the bees to defend their hive. So this is removable. You're not pinning this into place. This really only goes in, like I said, when you're first establishing your hive and you're trying to get your numbers up, or for example, when I'm in the market for getting my queen, I will well, I'll show you how that process goes when I drop this off at my friend's house to get the queen. But this makes it easier to block off the face of the hive when I'm transporting all this from my buddy's house back here to my house with the queen and a handful of bees already in the frames. You see, as it stands right now, we're 45 inches tall from the bee stand, and you know, there's differing opinions on whether or not you even need this stand. Honestly, I think it's kind of a nice to have, not really a need to have. As I think I mentioned in the first video, a lot of people that study bees and bee flight say that the bees fly at about a 45-degree angle with their back part of their bodies hanging low. So when they are approaching their hive, they're coming in like this, so they can land on all 6 legs as opposed to kind of crash landing. I don't know, it's hard to say. I've never seen a natural hive built with a 45-degree slope, but like I said, it's a nice to have. I had some materials. I like building stuff with weird angles like that, so I did do that. But this whole thing stands 45 inches tall, and I've had a couple people ask me about top bar hives and stuff, and I've never built a top bar hive. Actually, I'm kind of curious to try one out. But what I like about this is I can get a full hive, and this thing takes up about a 16 by 20? 16 by 20 or so footprint. Actually, it's a little more than 20 inches, maybe 26, because it's got this entry, which is like 3 and some change, and then it's got this little, where I can't even see, it's so damn bright out here. Anyway, it's got this, yeah, there it is. It's got the inspection plate in the back. But this takes up a very, very small footprint, and I think I've all but decided on putting the hive right here on the downside of this lemon tree, because I do have a walking path on the high side of the lemon tree that'll allow me to come up the hill, walk around the lemon tree, and come down and access the hives from the rear. Now you want to face your hives, the entryway, kind of to a south-southeasterly position so they get that morning sun. South is that way, excuse me, I forgot where I was sitting. South is that way, which makes east this way. So I'm going to put the entryway right about here, maybe kick them over a little southerly. But that way they get the most sun at the entryway. It starts the activity of the bees pretty early on in the day, and that should be a good spot for them. You know, they've got the apple trees. My apple trees are in bloom. These African daisies are in bloom. Lemon tree is still a little juvenile. I grew that one from a seed. Right there, from a seed. That may be flowering by the end of this year, maybe next year. It's only about 3 years old. And then they've got this purple bush thing. Anyway, they've got a ton to eat here in the yard, but I digress. Let's talk about the inner hive cover. So an inner hive cover is designed, by design, it is there to restrict the movement of the bees outside of the hive from the top, but it also has to provide airflow through the hive. The bottom screen board and the stand, you remember, allows air to enter the bottom of the hive, and you've got to find a way in the top of the hive how to let stuff out. And I've seen several designs. I don't think there's a right or wrong way. The PDFs that I used in building kind of the screen bottom board and the bottom stand that I've included in the description of previous videos has some pretty complicated inner hive cover, and quite honestly that seems way more complicated to me than actually has to happen. These are the hive frames. Well, here's part of the hive frames. Now just picture that these frames go in the hives like this, right? This one's obviously a 9.5 inch, but I'm just using this for mock-up purposes. This was for the bottom to make sure everything fit. And then this is for the shorter top, the 3 top boxes, which are 6 5/8. But anyhow, imagine 10 of these, right? They're lined up in like this, all the way across. Now, like I said, the website that I'm gonna have linked in the description and that I used to build the rest of this hive has a pretty complicated, like 5-piece design, and I think that's more than is really necessary. So I'm just using a piece of plywood, 1/2-inch plywood. Now, okay, I've seen it done a couple different ways. Of course, I'm going to do it my own way, and I'll let you know why I'm doing it my own way in here. The website that I have linked has a center oval, kind of almost looks like a grab hole with a screen over it, and that allows a chimney effect, fresh air in through the bottom, and then it vents out through here. My buddy, the bee man, he's got holes, 2 holes in either corner, with the number 8 hardware cloth over the top, which restricts the bees from coming out of the top, but allows the airflow. And I've seen this before, where you take this inner cover and you cut it just shy. You cut it the length so it's flush, but you cut it just so it's a bit shy to leave an 1/8 of an inch gap between this top box and this hole here. And then you would obviously line it up to this side. So you just set it down like this, you make sure it's flush on one side, and there's no more than about an 1/8 of an inch gap so the bees can't escape. But that's also a way for you to ventilate. Am I doing it that way? Of course not. I could have, right? I already chose the easier path of just doing a solid piece of wood on the top. And I could have gone the easiest path and just cut it a little bit this much short and have this vent, but I'm not quite doing it that way. You'll remember this material. This is the it's not expanded metal. I can't even think of what this stuff is called. This is the holy metal that I used for the screen bottom board. And I'm going to try something different on this one for 2 reasons. First of all, I had this as scrap, and I hate throwing away little bits of scrap for no good reason, so sometimes I'll try different designs to see how they work. If you picture all the frames lined up like this, I'm going to run my ventilation holes in this inner cover like this. I'm going to put one here, and I'm going to put one here. And I think what that will allow is that'll allow good airflow across all the frames. You know, if you just put a center hole, you're really only ventilating like frame 4, 5, 6, but these outer ones don't quite get air. And then my bee buddy does corners. He does about a 2 or 2¼ inch hole in either corner, which is pretty cool because that allows the air really to flow. But since I have these strips, I'm going to run holes like this and this. Just some narrow holes. They're going to be about 1 3/4 wide. They're probably going to be about 6 inches long, which should be adequate. So I'm going to go ahead and cut these holes, and we're going to take a look, and we're going to allow this plane to fly over. there's how the inner hive cover sits. This will allow the bees to be kept inside the hive without escaping out of the top. This will keep critters from getting in through the top, because I do have another cover, what's called a telescoping cover, or the outer hive cover will sit on top of this. That'll be my next video. But these holes ended up being 1.5 inches wide, or excuse me, 1.25 inches wide by 7.5 inches long. And you can see, right, they're gonna encompass 2/3 of these frames on this side, and this will do 2/3 of the frames on this side, and should allow for adequate airflow. And if yeah, I mean, this is all about experimentation, and I had these screens, like I said, left over from the bottom screen, and I hate wasting anything, so I'm going to give it a try. It's all about experimenting, and we'll see if it works. If it seems like it's too much air for them, I can always take a piece of tape or something and tape up part of it, or put what I've done in the past is I'll take get like a box, a cereal box, that heavy paper, and I'll just lay it over one of the vents, and it'll obstruct a little bit of the airflow. But in my area, you don't want to obstruct airflow, because we do get a lot of moisture. Being close to the ocean, we get a lot of marine influence. Oftentimes we'll get the morning fog that takes a couple hours to burn off, so these guys come out pretty wet in the morning. And then what I did was I put 1/4 inch spacers, and in my next video I'll show you how I built the top hive cover, and this will keep that top cover 1/4 inch above the screening and will allow what I think should be pretty adequate airflow. Oh, and if you're wondering why this isn't painted, I'm not going to paint this board, and I have very good reason why. I think very good reason why. Oh, I did take a belt sander. I used 1/2 inch, this is 1/2 inch plywood, and I used 1/2 inch staples, but they kind of poked through the bottom a little bit, and I do want to keep these nice and smooth. I don't want any bees to bump their little heads, and yeah, so I put a belt sander on there. Why am I not going to paint this? For me, I almost consider this inner hive cover a consumable product of the beehive. And in the past, when I've taken, you start accessing the hive to inspect your frames or to harvest honey, at least in my area, I'll notice that when I paint these, they get a lot of condensation in here. It gets really wet on the inside of this lid. And when I used to paint these lids, these inner hive covers, it wouldn't allow the water to soak into this hive cover, right? It would create droplets on the inside here in the early morning, and basically rain on the poor bees' parade, and that's just not good. I don't want that much moisture to stay in there. So I painted the top cover, I painted these sides, because if you do get condensation on the inside of the hive bodies, it'll just run down, right? It'll just kind of sheet down the inside of each box, and it'll go out the bottom of the screen board. But here, if you get condensation on the inside under lid of your inner hive cover, it's just going to rain on their little parade, which I don't want. So by leaving this piece of plywood raw, it will allow the moisture to soak into this, and then it'll dry by way of just airflow, right? It'll get wet either way, and if it doesn't last the life of the hive, it's really not that hard to rebuild one of these, right? So no paint means water soaks in. Yeah, there you go, the inner hive cover. So the next video will be the top cover. Thanks for watching. See ya.